Well, one of the first steps that the new government took was to bring together the metro mayors and regional leaders. You were the only Tory in the room, I think. Did you feel welcome, and was there a genuine concern for devolved government?
I did feel welcome, actually, and I think it was very telling of the Prime Minister that probably 24, 48 hours of the first full day in office, he invited all of the metro mayors into Downing Street, something that, while the Conservative government were very supportive of devolution and actually started it under George Osborne and David Cameron, there was never a collective meeting of mayors in Downing Street. And this Prime Minister's gone further to formalise that relationship with those mayors across the country by setting up the Council of Regions and Nations, where we'll have that formal seat at the top table to be able to feed in the concerns that we have from our local areas. So I think it was a really positive start. I think it's fair to say that the Prime Minister and this government recognise that mayors across the country are absolutely essential if he wants to achieve his growth goals that he has set very clearly in the manifesto and as part of his government. He doesn't want to borrow more, he doesn't want to cut services, he doesn't want to increase taxes other than where he set them out in the manifesto. He needs to unleash growth, and he was very clear in saying the only way that the government can succeed is if he allows mayors to succeed. So it was a really positive start generally. But also, from my point of view, as the only Tory mayor left at the moment, it was nice to see the Prime Minister inviting me before that meeting to have a one-on-one meeting with him. I'd never known Keir Starmer before, we'd never met before, and it was nice for him to hold out that olive branch and say that he wanted to work with me. And I was very clear with him, he's the Prime Minister of this country, and if he succeeds, then the country succeeds, and I'll work with anybody to help my area succeed as well. So I think it's a good start, both on a personal level, to work with this Labour government to try and get things done, and secondly, I think it's a really positive thing that they're doubling down on devolution.
What did you learn about him in that private meeting that you didn't know before?
Well, I learned what was really interesting. There was detail we got into about certain projects that we wanted support from the government on, and there was a very clear concern that not because of change of policy, but a transition from one government to another could see certain things fall through the cracks. So there was some detail in there, which I'm happy to go into, but the more interesting thing was the context of that. And one of the things that I took away from meeting the Prime Minister is that he is very much he's very much got the bit between his teeth. You can see, I think, over that weekend following the election victory that he had, he realised the size of the majority that he's got. Again, just listening to the programme there about some of the challenges that he's got, I think he sees that he's got such a large mandate, he's got such a big majority, that I don't think he's going to be frightened, certainly in the early days, of taking on some of the factions and some of the people within his own party to be able to deliver on the promises he made during the election. And that was really telling. That's something that came across really clearly. Oh, well,
let's talk about that. One thing that might get in the way of what is clearly a burgeoning bromance is the tension, which I think has already arisen, between the government desire to devolve, on the one hand, and on the other hand, to absolutely ensure growth through busting through the planning system. And you've already had a bit of an experience of this. You want to regenerate a big area on Teesside and the Tees Works project. The Chancellor has said that she's going to refer it, she wants it referred to the National Audit Office, which will obviously hold it up. In the end, who's going to be in charge? Is it going to be Whitehall or is it going to be you?
Well, we'll have to wait and see how the government react. Like I say, the meeting I had with them, both collectively with the mayors and one-on-one with the Prime Minister, I've not met the Chancellor yet, was a positive one. We both clearly wanted to work together to get things done. You know, I can only take the Prime Minister at face value. As with anybody, I try and take them at face value. Ultimately, actions speak louder than words, and we're in very early days of, I think, a very positive and constructive relationship. But time will tell, and we'll have to wait and see how that plans out. Now, I would say to the Prime Minister, and I did say to the Prime Minister, that Teesside is the centre of the decarbonisation agenda. We've got billions of pounds worth of private investment, both landed and coming. And if he wants to achieve his growth goals, then he needs to support the plans that we have in Teesside.
OK, well, we'll talk again when the decision is made and see if things are quite as sunny. Let's talk about the Conservative Party. In 2019, Boris Johnson said that the people of the North East had lent the Tories their votes, and he was humbled by it. People want change, we must not let them down, and so on. Is the reason that so many took back their votes on July the 4th and handed them to Reform, that the Conservatives let those people down?
Well, I think it's fair to say that the result a couple of weeks ago now should send a very, very, very clear signal to the Conservative Party that we did let a lot of people down. I think one of the things that did frustrate me about the election campaign is we allowed this message to get caught up in the whole election, which was there was 14 years of Tory chaos and 14 years of Conservative failure. That's just demonstrably not true, right? The frustrating thing is we won in 2010, we won in 2015, 2017, 2019. So by and large, people were pretty happy with 10 years of a Conservative government. So what happened post-2019?
Well, I think that's a bit of a stretch, isn't it? The fact that you won the election doesn't necessarily mean people were thrilled, but carry on.
Well, no, I don't think so. I think people say that there's, they were trying to kind of create this smear and slur that there was 14 years of something that people didn't want. Well, people were happy with 10 years of Conservative government because, like I say, we got an 80-seat majority in 2019. So what happened after that? Well, we know what happened after that. One, you've got the macro issues around coronavirus, we've got wars in Ukraine, etc., which we can go into or not. But actually within the Conservative Party, what we had were numerous different prime ministers, infighting, U-turns, and a party that lost its sense of duty and direction as a government that's supposed to serve this country. And that's what I've been talking about since the election, that the Conservative Party needs to be very, very clear, and I think they need to focus on the message, which is we lost the trust of the British people. People didn't see us as competent anymore, and in hindsight, and I didn't necessarily say this during the campaign because I didn't necessarily see it, but certainly in hindsight, it didn't matter, I think, what manifesto we put together, and it didn't matter how well Rishi Sunak performed on the campaign trail. We could have had the best manifesto and the best campaign. I just think people wanted to vote against a Conservative government. I think the data showed that. We didn't see a big increase in the Labour vote share. What we saw was people going out to vote to actively vote against a Conservative government. They felt that we'd failed them, we felt that we weren't competent anymore, we'd lost their trust, and they wanted that change. And that's something we need to focus on to be able to regain that trust.
They didn't vote for you, and as you say, the Labour vote didn't go up particularly. Where they went was reform. Now, you've got a challenge here. What does the Conservative Party do next, and who would embody the right sort of change? James Cleverly, we read this morning telling friends that he's up for it. Ditto Tom Tugendhat. Who do you want as the next leader of your party?
I mean, I don't know at the moment. I've been asked that question numerous times, and I genuinely don't have an answer to it. It's too early. I think the thing about the leadership contest that's really interesting is we, by and large, know roughly who's going to stand. There might be a couple of wildcards that come out that people aren't necessarily expecting, and certainly probably aren't household names to people out there in the general public. But I think we, by and large, know who's going to stand. A lot of them haven't announced yet, but we kind of know. So we roughly know where they stand in the Conservative Party. The clear thing for this leadership contest is what are they going to do to rebuild that trust and confidence and rebuild that competence of the Conservative Party that we've always been well known for, so that we can fight the next election to hopefully regain power, to form the government. That's the bit we don't know, and that's the bit why I can't say who I would support yet, because nobody set that vision out.
That's fair enough. The Democratic Party can't decide on its own candidate, so I don't expect to get you to decide on your candidate instantly. But perhaps you could tell us, what's the sort of person? I mean, what's their profile? Should we be looking at the sort of person that a party that Suella Braverman's talking about, the sort of party that people like Tugendhat or Damien Green are talking about? What do you think is the future for the Conservative Party if it's going to come back from this?
Well, the future of the Conservative Party is a tried and tested one, and we lost our way over the last few years, and we lost what has always made us a very successful party, actually the most successful party in the Western world when it comes to democracy. And what we lost is that general competence. What we need is a leader who can go back to basics, understand that we are there to serve the British people, understand that we have to have a sensible hold on economics, understand that people want, by and large, relatively low taxes, they want good services, and they also want somebody that they can trust, and they also want a party that isn't going to fight like cats in a sack. And that's ultimately what drove the election result. People just didn't trust us anymore, and they thought ultimately that we cared more about the Conservative Party and infighting and positioning within the Conservative Party and the Conservative government than we did about serving our country. And what we want is somebody who cares about public service and actually can rebuild what will be potentially be a long road back into power. We want somebody who can be fresh, who can be new, and who can set out some clear ideas. And I don't think it's sorry to keep going, but I don't think it's necessarily about a lurch to the left or the right. It's about that point of competence. It's not about the spectrum of the Conservative Party, because we've always been a broad church. Can I just ask
you quickly about the manner in which the contest is conducted? I read this morning that one of the possible contenders, Suella Braverman, has been sharing her opinions. And she says that some of the party are, I'm quoting here, smug and self-righteous centrist cranks. Are you amongst the smug and self-righteous centrist cranks that she has in mind?
I hope I'm not, but I don't know what Suella defines as one of those people. I'll have to ask her whether she includes me in that group of people. But I did set out, actually, just last week, a letter that
perhaps we might need to hear a bit less from her. Would that be good for the party?
Sorry, I missed that. Apologies.
I was just asking, from what you were saying, you won't say it directly, but I'm taking that you think that we might hear... The Conservative Party might benefit from hearing a little less from Suella Braverman and that kind of language.
I think what and again, I was just about to say, I set out last week very clearly to all leadership candidates, actually. I issued an open letter to anybody that wants to stand in the leadership contest. 3 things that I think this contest should be conducted in. 1, it shouldn't be about the past, it should be about what is the offering for this country in the future. 2, I think any leadership contender needs to rule out a partnership or a coalition or whatever relationship with reform. They are a symptom of the problem. They are not the cause of the problem for the Conservative Party, and I think that way madness lies. And I think the third point, which is the point that you're putting to me right now, is that there shouldn't be any on-blue attacks. If we want to spend the next 2, 3, 4, 5 months fighting with each other, that goes to the cause of the election defeat just 2 weeks ago. And I would implore Suella, as well as every other leadership contender, to conduct this leadership contest with civility. Let's come together and let's offer a positive option to the country.
Ben Houchen, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Pleasure. Thank you.